Hey everybody, thanks for watching. It's me, Andy from the Commander's Brew, with my boy Karth here, as always. You know how we do it. We're here making a couple decks, having a few laughs, and just having a good time. Hey, this is a brand new commander from the Innistrad Midnight Hunt set. Check it out. All right, everybody, welcome back. Here we go. It is a brand new commander from the brand new Innistrad Midnight Hunt set that is not even fully spoiled yet as of this recording. So you know, what we do around here is we want to get you, the newest stuff the fastest possible. So we grabbed one that had been spoiled and we brewed a deck around it. Now, to be honest, right now, they're not all the most interesting commanders I've seen in my life so far. There's some exciting things to be sure, but right now it's just like only a handful of the legendaries, I would guess, that are out from this set. But it's, we got some cool stuff in here, and so who did we decide to go with, and what did we decide to do with it? Well, that's the more interesting question, TBH. But we decided this week to brew around an Izzet commander by the name of Vadrik Astral Archmage. So yeah, I started with this commander, and then we wanted to go in a unique direction with this, and you'll see what I mean after I read the card here. So Vadrik, not to be confused with Vadrock, which is also a creature. A legendary creature. It's one letter off.
If we get Muldrotho in this set, I'm going to be so mad.
This is basically what's happening here. But Vadrik...
Winoto,
yeah,
right? Joiner of four souls.
Yeah, just change a vowel. There you have it.
They're out of names. We are officially out of names.
The new Planeswalker, Juice. Okay. But Vadrik is Vadrik Astral Archmage here. Here he is. It's a 1 blue-red. It's an Izzet commander, human wizard. Vadrik is a 1/2, and it says, if it's either day or night, it becomes day as Vadrik enters the battlefield. Pause there just for a second because there's this whole new mechanic. You might want to go look it up. But the day or night thing, it's basically how we're doing werewolves now. It's essentially the same as the old werewolf rule about no spells cast on a turn flips the werewolves, and then 2 or more cast flips them back. Except that now, instead of on anyone's turn, it's only that person's turn that it counts. So like, if I cast no spells, Vadrik doesn't flip because he's not a flip card. But if I cast no spells, it turns to night, right? And then the next time, it's not if like on the next person's turn, if they cast 1 spell and then I cast a spell also on their turn, that won't count as the 2 spells needed to turn it to night.
It used to.
Yes, it used to, and in fact, it still does for those old cards. So weird. There's been a lot of talk about the errata that people want and all this type of thing because those rules are not streamlined. They do not do the same thing. The new werewolves work differently than the old werewolves slightly. So,
but it is true that once we have a daytime, the game knows whether it's day or night, and it's keeping track.
It's like the Monarch in that way.
Okay.
It does keep track whether or not anything cares about it. Technically, it does change if you have something like a Vadrik come into play. Well, Vadrik does care about it in a way because here it is. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost X less to cast, where X is Vadrik's power. Okay. And whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, you put a +1/+1 counter on Vadrik. So Vadrik's going to pump himself up whenever it changes from day to night. And honestly, we didn't really build towards that with this commander, oddly enough. I think it will in some ways, simply because of the nature of instants and sorceries. Sometimes you'll be casting none. Sometimes you'll be casting a bunch. And will that change it from day to night? Yes. At times it will. But really what we focused on is this ability to lower the cost of instants and sorceries, and with Vadrik's power, and what can we do with that? So looking at this commander, obviously there's a lot of things that come to mind. This is going to be a good Lost Cards episode, I just got to say, because this is a classic Izzet Spellslinger type thing where we can go in a ton of different directions with it. For the main episode, I really wanted to do something slightly different than what we're used to with Izzet and with caring about instants and sorceries. So basically, after really running it through the Discord and, you know, trying to pick our brains over there and really trying to come up with something, I did what, you know, when you have writer's block, they say the best thing to do is just leave it and come back to it later and see what happens. Well, that's what I did with this. I left the brewing sesh and then came back the next day and I came up with something. And here it is. We're talking about Izzet zombies.
Amazing.
Amazing zombies. So, you know, hey, we don't have black in this deck, but it doesn't matter. We don't need black. You know what we need? Instants and sorceries, and lots of them. Blue's the other zombie color, so we're going to get a bunch of that. You know what? I'll just let the deck speak for itself. Sean, let's start it up here. Hold on one second. There we go. Okay. Let's start it up here and reading sort of our base here, our vegetables. We got to have a couple of those like spell slinging, you know, familiar spells that we all know. So take these first few.
Wouldn't be an Izzet deck without some of these staples. Faithless Looting, a single red for a sorcery, draw 2, discard 2, you can flash it back for 3. Treasure Cruise for once that graveyard gets full. It's an 8-mana spell, but we can delve it down to a single blue to draw 3 cards at sorcery speed. And then Think Twice. You're getting 2 cards off of this. 2 mana for the first one, 3 mana for the second one as a flashback. Whenever you got the time in your turn as an instant. Love them. Love all of these.
Right, yeah. So that's kind of what we're doing when it comes to like little cantripy type things, casting stuff, getting it in. Like, you're right, you know, getting it into our graveyard. That might be something we're looking towards getting. But before we get into digging into all that and why we picked this Izzet spell for this Izzet commander for a zombie deck, let's take a look at some of the zombie synergies that we have working in these colors. Well, first up is Havengul Runebinder. 2 blue for the 2/2 human wizard. You pay 2 and a blue and tap it. You can exile a creature card from your graveyard and you get a 2/2 black zombie creature token on the battlefield. Then you put a +1/+1 counter on each zombie creature you control. That's really good. I do think this is a bit of an underrated card when it comes to zombies.
Yeah.
And certainly when we're looking to get as many zombies as we can in this deck without black, this is a great card to have.
Yeah.
We need it. Another one is Stitcher Geralf. 3 blue. It's a legendary human wizard, 3/4. Pay 2 and a blue, tap this creature. Each player puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard. Exile up to 2 creature cards put into graveyards this way. Put an XX blue zombie creature token onto the battlefield where X is the total power of the cards exiled this way. So it just makes us some tokens. Basically, these 2 are just making us some tokens. The Runebinder is going to make them a little bigger. That's nice. And then we've got an actual zombie here, Geralf's Mindcrusher, 4 blue for the 5/5 huge zombie horror. When it enters the battlefield, target player puts the top 5 cards of of their library into their graveyard, and then it has Undying. So just a little bit of a taste. We're making some. We got some other creatures that make zombie tokens, and then we do have a smattering of zombies that are actually in the deck, proper zombie creatures. Oh, sorry.
Nice.
Looked like you were going to say something. Yeah.
No.
So these are just kind of vegetables. This is just kind of what we need to have in the deck to get things rolling. But this is an Izzet zombie deck. This is not your grandmother's, you know, zombie deck where we're putting all the familiar black zombie cards and graveyard stuff. This is going to be a little different. So in order to explore that, let's start talking about the neat moves.
Working on a
Neat.
move.
We're just going to take a second to handle a little bit of business. And the main point is, thanks for watching. If you want to see more of our comedic takes and offbeat decks, consider subscribing to our channel and hitting that bell to make sure you don't miss anything. And if you're loving our stuff and want to support further, the best way is to head over to patreon.com/commandersbrew. Find out how our generous patrons keep our show growing and how you can get in on the brewing action too through our Discord. Or, if you'd rather, just hang out and play some games with like-minded Commander players. Now, let's get back to those any moves.
Okay, so we have to get to the real heart, the real meat of this deck. Sean, I want you to read these first these 2 cards here, because this is actually how we're going to tie in Izzet's zombies, how we're going to tie it all together.
Some faves of mine. Love this one here. Rise from the Tides. It's a 6-mana sorcery. Create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token for each instant and sorcery in your graveyard. I already talked about 3 cards that go to the graveyard real easy. So this thing for 6 mana, you're going to make a lot of zombies. And then we've also got following up Hour of Eternity, blue, XX. So you exile X target creature cards from your graveyard, and for each creature exiled this way, you make a token copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. They are Eternals, sort of, from Hour of Devastation.
That's right. And then there's actually one more kind of like it's not as good as these two, but
Invade the City. Yeah, this is sorcery. I mean, it's 1 blue-red, amass X, where X is the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. I mean, I'd rather get a 2/2 per, but this only cost me 3. So getting a giant, so the 7/7 and 8/8, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad for the mana cost. And like this will most likely end up costing you just the 2 anyways. And the same goes for these other 2 spells. Part of the big appeal for me when I was looking at Vadrik and like what type of themes to do and what type of stuff we can do with it. Rise from the Tides is 6 mana sorcery, and Hour of Eternity needs 2 X's, and then it's 3 blue pips. Like, Vadrik is going to do a lot of work for us to get these spells down to a very affordable, cost, to the point where we might even be able to cast a Rise from the Tides, cast one of those cards that gets something back from our graveyard, and then cast this again, which is an incredible value. And then Hour of Eternity. Same type of deal, except that obviously that first it's kind of like you only have to pay the single X, because usually Vadrik will give you that 3, 4, even 5, probably closer to like 3 and 4 off of that cost. So yeah, this is what we're doing. We're trying to get our graveyard nice and full, and then whatever makes sense. Either we're Hour of Eternity or we're Rising from the Tides, whatever. So let's fill that yard. Let's get cards in the graveyard. Fact or Fiction, incredible card, 3 and a blue for the instant. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put 1 pile into your hand, the other into your graveyard. I mean, just goes without saying, this is great. And again, with Vadrik's ability of discounting those instants and sorceries, Fact or Fiction often just costs a single blue. We also have Desperate Raving. This is a fun time that we can use this card, because usually it's not really that good. 1 and a red for an instant, draw 2 cards, then discard a card at random, and then you can flash it back for 2 and a blue. So yeah, discarding a card at random is obviously not great, but we kind of don't care in this deck. Anything we have in our hand, it's fine to just discard. And if there is anything you really desperately want to hang on to, you can always cast that first or whatever. It's really not that bad. There's plenty of ways to get stuff back in this deck, so we're not super worried about it. And Hazardous Monument is also here. Great card. 3 mana for the legendary artifact. Red creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. That's nice. And whenever you cast a creature spell, you may discard a card, and if you do, draw a card. So that's the type of yard filling we're doing in this deck. There's a lot of like this kind of looting and or rummaging or whatever you want to call it, that red and blue tend to do. Stuff that we get to see what we're doing for. Like, it's not just straight milling. We do have some straight milling cards in here too, but most of it is this type. And it's cool because it just really lets you be selective with it. Sometimes, oddly enough, in this deck, you end up with like a mitt full of lands, because you're just... like, you're putting all the instants and sorceries in your graveyard because that's where you want them to be, and you're only keeping like 1 or 2 for a key moment. So yeah, it can be, it's kind of weird that way, but it ends up working out. I did manage to sneak in a test session with this, and was pretty surprised at how well these types of graveyard filling cards work.
Oh, can I throw a curveball here?
Please do.
I don't know if it's actually in the deck list, but it's my favorite. I want Epiphany at the Drown Yard in there.
Oh yes, Epiphany. That's a great card.
Because it's like any deck where your opponent gets to choose. It's blue X instant, reveal X +1, and then you put them into 2 piles, and an opponent picks which pile goes into your hand and the other pile goes in your graveyard. But in decks like this, it's just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make 2 amazing piles. This pile is like, either pile is amazing in my graveyard or amazing in my hand, and I would love to where you're just like, I'm gonna make a pile of a single card and a pile of 9 cards, and they're like, well, obviously I have to put the 9 cards in the graveyard, but that's just going to give you everything you need.
Exactly. That's actually, I was just thinking about it. I'm like, I want those 9 in the yard for sure.
Yeah.
But if they give them in your hand, that's also fine.
You're like, okay, pal, because I'm going to discard a few at the end of my turn anyway. So you can't, normally this card sucks, but in a graveyard deck, I just love it.
You know what? This is absolutely incredible in this deck because same type of thing. You can sometimes just cast this for a single blue and get 4 or 5 cards from it. Like that's incredible. That's great. It becomes Fact or Fiction. Same type of thing. I love it. Absolutely, this belongs in the deck, and I would suggest putting it in. Okay, but there's we fill in our graveyard with instants and sorceries. We're looking like an Izzet deck that way, but we got this cool new spin where we're going to try and make a bunch of zombies from it. We're going to, capitalize on some of our zombie synergies we have from our creatures as well. But there's also a little extra little move in this deck, and actually it comes from what we were kind of doing in the Discord when we were brewing this deck at first. I was like, can we do this as an entire deck? And of course we can. But instead, it just became kind of a sub-theme of this deck, which I still think fits perfectly. Sean, why don't you tell us about the flashback cards in this deck?
Ooh, right. So obviously, if we're dealing with the graveyard, flashback is perfect. What more perfect mechanic to be in an Innistrad-themed deck with an Innistrad commander at the helm? Reckless Charge is a single red for a sorcery. Target creature gets +3/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. Guess what? Throw that on Vadrik. Now all your spells cost 4 less, so you can flash it back for 2 in a red, or just a single red now.
Yeah.
Because it's cheaper.
That's right.
And now Vadrik's power would be 7, so now you're just off of 2 red mana, you're like, okay, cool. So single blue,
yes.
Treasure Cruise, no delve, single red, some other huge thing. This is great. Increasing Confusion. Blue and an X for a sorcery. Target player mills the X cards. And it's got flashback for X blue. And if it is cast from a graveyard, i.e. via flashback, target player mills twice that many cards instead. Again, imagine Reckless Charge off of 2 red.
Yeah.
And Vadrik is up to, do we say 7? So then it's like single blue, mill 7, single blue again, mill 14. And it's target player. You can do yourself. And you probably will.
Well, that's what you want to do. Exactly. You want to mill yourself. And then the thing about a deck like this is that the graveyard is really just an extension of our hand. So increasing confusion is kind of like drawing all these cards, not only drawing them all because we got a ton of flashback in the deck, but we're not having to pay that extra flashback cost for one thing. So because Vadrik is actually discounting all the flashback costs, but also this is like drawing cards and it's activating stuff like Rise from the Tides and all those other ones we talked about earlier. So this card is actually sneaky, very, very good, and you hardly ever want to spend more than a single blue on it because Vadrik will give you that bonus.
Nice. I mean, we're also running Ignite the Future. It's a sorcery for 3 and a red. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. It says play, so that means we're allowed to put lands into the play that way. Right. If this spell was cast from a graveyard, you may play those cards this way without paying their mana costs. Flashes back for a hefty 7 and a red, but that's not always so bad for Vadrik.
Yeah.
Nice. Especially if we got a huge discount going, I'm happy to get a bunch of extra cards that way.
Totally.
And then one of the best spells to flashback if you've got extra mana discounts is Devil's Play. Red X, sorcery, X damage any target, flashback, X, red. So yeah. Let's burn some faces.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to burn a face. Sometimes you just need to take a creature down with a damage spell, and this is going to do obviously whatever you need it to do at the time you need to do it. Flashback works so well with this commander, with this strategy, because we want to be filling the graveyard, all the things I just said. So it becomes a really fun method of play, and we can take advantage of a couple other cards that really care about flashback, like Quiet Speculation, which is a 1 and a blue for a sorcery that just says search target player's library for up to 3 cards of flashback, put them into that player's graveyard, then the player shuffles his or her library. Honestly, sometimes this is just worth it just alone to get Reckless Charge, because it can be such a good card from your graveyard.
Yeah.
And And we also have Runic Repetition, which is 2 and a blue, and it's a sorcery that returns a target exiled card with flashback you own to your hand. So this one pulls one out of exile. I normally wouldn't really care about this type of effect, except that it itself is a sorcery. So when it goes to the yard, you have it sitting there as a +1 to your cards that care about it. And so in a way, and because we're going to be likely having it be discounted, because it's 2 and a blue, it's not cheap. So for single blue to like cycle this and get a card that's good out of exile, I feel like that's going to be it's pretty safe to say that's an average case scenario. Or at least close to it.
I'm getting that reckless charge back.
Yeah,
out of there.
Exactly. So I'm willing to run Runic Repetition here. I don't think this card's great, but I think we can make it work in this deck. And another 2 cards that really work well with this getting things out of our graveyard, casting things from our graveyard, and so on are Secrets of the Dead, which is 2 and a blue for an enchantment that says whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, draw a card. And River Kelpie, this classic 3 blue for a beast. It's a 3/3 beast. And it says whenever it or another permanent enters the battlefield from a graveyard, draw a card. And then whenever a player casts a spell from a graveyard, draw a card. And it has persist. So, whenever you're casting your stuff from your graveyard, flashing it back, you're getting stuff out. When you're bringing your zombies out, they can also, if they enter the battlefield from your graveyard, they'll draw you cards as well. Not to mention the fact that River Kelpie will do it itself when it dies because it persists. It'll draw you a card. So it's a really solid creature. And as I'll talk about in our new segment coming up, which Sean doesn't even know about, and I'm dropping it on him, we're going to talk a little bit more about this card. But there you have it. That's, this is what we're trying to do here. And I think that there's just enough support for this deck in Magic that it works.
Love it.
I could do with another Rise from the Tides like situation that cares specifically about zombies, but if you wanted to lean away from like the zombie part of it a little bit, you could obviously, like we've seen those decks. You've got stuff like Talrand and things like that make drakes, that type of thing. But really, if there was one more card that did this, I think this deck would be like perfect. So, maybe we'll get one in some of the upcoming Innistrad stuff. Who knows? This whole set hasn't been spoiled yet. Maybe we'll see a little more zombie stuff. Who knows? But I gotta say, I'm impressed with the amount of cards that came together to make this work. I think it's actually decent.
Yeah.
So big help. I mean, Chiefy, Groove Chicken, Nostrak 2, Beppo, Papadillo, Micah, Eternity's Crafter. We had a bunch of people in there. Thanks for bearing with me, everyone who was in there and then who decided to either not stick with it because there was I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do this commander and that was kind of it. And like I said, I left and came back the next day and then kind of figured the deck out. So, but there was a lot of help because we did talk a lot about the whole flashback thing. We talked a ton about the day and night stuff. Keep in mind that when we talk about pumping up our commander in this deck, the day and night stuff is going to happen, right? There's going to be times when your opponents don't cast a spell in their turn and they wait. There's going to be times when they cast 2 and then it switches and so on. So the pumping will kind of come naturally and you don't need that much of it. But hey, we've talked about our Discord helpers. We've talked about basically the entire deck at this point. That means it's time for the budget report. All right. Well, like I said, we've got a new little segment coming up here inside of the budget report. But let's first talk about the actual budget of this one. Basically, as I kind of alluded to, there's just enough cards to make this weird Izzet spell-slinging zombie strategy work. So I didn't really cut anything for budget. I had to move some stuff around a little bit, but really I left in kind of the bigger budget cards that I think, you can decide if they're necessary. Let's talk about them. The most expensive card in this $150 deck, the low being $87. So it's not outside of the, realm of reasonable, costed things. The most expensive card is Kindred Discovery. This is we all know this card is very expensive. It's 3 blue. It's an enchantment. It says when it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. And whenever a creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield or attacks, you draw a card. So we choose zombies here. We draw a bunch of cards. This card's $26 though. So it's really up there. I like sometimes when you think of a tribal deck, I often will, I always do this. I have it like, why am I making this a tribal deck? What is the payoff for it being tribal specifically, right? Because a lot of times I'll start thinking I'm making a tribal deck, and then I'll ask myself that question, and I'll look at it, and I'll be like, oh, this isn't even a tribal deck. It's just a tokens deck, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I have a soldiers tribal deck that doesn't care about soldiers at all, but there's all soldiers in it. It's just a token deck. So these are the cards that make the tribal aspect of it pay off. And Kindred Discovery is an incredible card. It's just that it's $26.
I know you've got Neheb the Eternal in here, who snuck up to $17.
I know.
It makes sense because it's free mana. 3 red for a legendary creature, zombie Minotaur warrior. You got a zombie. There it is in the type line. It's a 4/6 with a flick 3. So even if he's blocked, you're going to do 3 damage to your whoever blocks it. And at the beginning of your second main, you add red to your mana pool for each 1 life your opponents have lost. So if he's not blocked, that's going to be at least 4. If maybe more if he's pumped. But if he is blocked, it's at least 3, not to mention all the other zombies and things getting in. So making a ton of mana with Neheb is a thing. $17.
$17 though, quite a bit there.
I think Neheb is far better suited as a commander. I think that $17 price tag suits Neheb in the commander spot, but I don't think you're getting $17 of value off of his inclusion in the 99.
Yes, I totally agree. That's a very good. That's a very good way of looking at it, because I would agree that's why it costs that much, is because that's how good it is as a commander. Another card that's in here that you want zombies, well, you want a Field of the Dead. It's the land that enters taps for colorless, and then whenever this or another land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands with different names, you just make a 2/2 black zombie.
Despite this being basically a commander staple at this point, every deck runs like 30 to 40 lands, and they're almost all uniquely named. So Field of the Dead is free zombies for any deck that wants them. That's the reason I just won't automatically put it in every deck. But I'm glad to see it here. Even though it's $16, it's good, and it suits what the deck is doing.
I agree. I say it goes in every deck, but then of course I don't actually put it in every deck. Not only because it's $16, like even if it was $2, I don't think I would put it in every deck. But you're right, it fits here. It makes the most sense in obviously zombies. The thing about Field of the Dead is the lower your land budget is, the worse this card gets. Right? Like the better your land base, the more different types of lands you can get. You're getting shocks, you're getting fetches, especially, obviously, right? The double entry, you're going to have a much better Field of the Dead deck. Whereas if you're running, budget stuff, you're getting a lot of basics in there, like I have in this deck. And Field of the Dead is not worth $16 in this deck. So in the one that I'm presenting here with a very budget mana base, Field of the Dead isn't that great. So that's definitely one you can cut if you're doing this exact deck.
And especially, like, I hate brewing this way. Again, I like it in this deck, but I hate that now, like, every 2-color deck, you might as well do Snow Islands and regular islands.
Yeah.
And Snow Mountains and regular mountains for no other reason than to getting a better chance of Field of the Dead coming online. I don't like that way of brewing. There's no reason for Snow Mountains in this zombie deck.
Yeah, I agree. And the last one here.
Ooh, Coat of Arms, a classic. It's expensive because they'll never reprint it because it's too confusing. It's 5 mana for an artifact. Each creature on the whole battlefield gets +1/+1 for each other creature, that doesn't include itself, on the whole battlefield that shares at least one creature type with it. You got Neheb, who's a zombie minotaur god, I think. So, like, warrior, I don't even know. So you've got a cross-reference. Yeah. Okay. Again, it's $15. It does a lot for a tribal deck. I also don't like running this because I hate the brain freeze I get. Now everyone's like, what is everything? I don't even know. You got an elf druid. I don't even want to figure what an elf druid is.
Okay, and then you don't forget to look at your opponent's boards too, because that all matters to that, right?
Yeah. So like, look at my zombie's a 1919. It's like, okay, my elf druid is a 2020. Big deal.
Yeah, right. So yeah, Coat of Arms. I mean, obviously it's a very powerful card. And it's really good. The tribal aspect. One of the payoffs of it being tribal is Coat of Arms. But it's $15. It's back up to being really expensive. It did drop down under 10 for a while, but now it's shot back up again. Hopefully the thing is they have reprinted this. Just not in like a standard legal set, of course, but right. But they have in like commander stuff or some like a
secret packs got one that was in a dual deck.
Right. So anyways, it's a great card, and of all the ones on this list that I would fight to like keep in the deck, this would probably be the one. I would say Kindred Discovery, except that it's like almost double the price of these other ones. So in that case, I say Coat of Arms. All right, here's the new segment, guys. It's called Budget Babies. Cha-ching. Okay. Hopefully we'll make a real version of that.
Oh yeah. I know someone who can provide us with excellent baby crying.
Oh, perfect. Yes, that would be amazing. Get a little Ellie noise in there. Okay. Budget Babies. New segment here on the show. Budget Babies. Basically, these are the cards that, we always talk about the expensive cards. We never talk about the ones that are really helping us with the budget, that are doing heavy lifting, that are super important, that are only a gumball or two here and there. So here we go. Let's do it. We've actually kind of already talked about this card, River Kelpie, coming in at 50 cents. The reason I wanted to specifically just mention it here in this section is that not only does it do all this stuff for our deck, from when we cast our stuff from our graveyard, when we have permanent center from our graveyard, it does it if it happens to your opponents as well. If your opponents, it's whenever a player casts a spell from a graveyard, draw a card. So this is kind of even good, even if the main focus of your deck isn't graveyard synergies. Like, you can just kind of run this if you have some of that going on, and then if your meta does stuff like this. Anyways, River Kelpie, 50 cents for this card. It's really, really good. I love it. It's a rare too. And Sean, take this next one. Yeah, I know you're familiar with this one.
Dreamscape Artist. 1 and a blue for Harrow on Legs. It's a 1/1 human spell shaper, and you can pay the same cost as Harrow but blue. 2 and a blue, tap, discard a card, and sacrifice a land. Search your library for up to 2 basics. Put them into battlefield. Untapped. You didn't hear me say tapped. I did not say tapped. Put them onto the battlefield. Then shuffle your library. That's what Harrow costs. You get to, whatever card you discard, you can pretend it's Harrow for 2 and a blue. You can do it at instant speed. It's Harrow.
It turns a land into 2 lands. Like, you take you could discard the card. It's incredible.
It turns a land you used to activate this.
Yeah, exactly.
It costs you 2.
And it's blue. And I know we've talked about this on the show before, but I did just want to say that in a blue-red deck, I basically really only wanted instants and sorceries or creatures in this deck. I didn't really want a ton of artifacts. Unfortunately, because of these colors, you just kind of have to have artifacts if you want to ramp and stuff like that. But I wanted to keep the number lower, and Dreamscape Artist is the first card I thought of when I thought about that, because I was like, oh, this is incredible. It's going to be that creature that Sean puts in his decks. Well, now I put it in mine too, because it is a great card, and it's a 25-cent card. I mean, it's a common, so we're not surprised at what the budget price is, but it does a lot of heavy lifting for a card that only costs 25 cents. It's really incredible.
Love it.
Right, and the section that we would normally have here, pricey cards we didn't run, well, we just ran them. We did just run them. We just ran them.
They don't exist.
That's why I thought of doing Budget Babies instead. Okay, well, there you go. There you have it. That's it. It's Vadrik. It's Izzet Zombies. And
amazing.
It's fun to take something that we've seen a lot, and we know the cards that go on these types of decks. We know what we're looking for, and then to try and just do anything else with it. That was the challenge here for Vadrik, because it is a cool commander, and it is it's good. It's powerful. And there's obviously some other ways. Check out Lost Cards, because there's going to be a couple of different ways to build this guy. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the way this turned out, because we took 2 things actually. We took an Izzet spell slinging deck, and we took a zombie tribal deck, and then we just did both of them a different way, right, at the same time. So try it out, give it a shot, see what you think. If you've got a zombie tribal deck, you probably have most of the cards anyway, so let's go for it. All right, well, thanks very much for watching, everyone. Again, remember to check out Lost Cards coming out after this, a couple days after. It's here on the channel. All the Lost Cards after all of our decks you can check out for some different styles, some different takes on these commanders and these themes. And otherwise, we'll see you back here next week with, I believe, our set review, but also brand new deck techs every week. Come on back. We'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you love what we're doing, consider supporting the show by going to patreon.com/commandersbrew.
And if you want to get any of the cards from our deck list, go to our TCG Player affiliate link below.
That helps us out too. And for a free way to help us out, consider sharing the show with some friends. Like and subscribe, add a comment or two.
See you later.
Bye.